Because I'm in a Mercedes, it's time for me to check myself out. And because I'm in the pinnacle trim, I'm an apex businessman. And this is the all-new C-Class. And because this is Savage Geese, we've gotten about 4 years late. The C-Class is the baby Benz, but it is the most popular sedan they currently sell. While they sell more SUVs than this is their biggest seller in the sedan segment. When it comes to the interior space of this car, if you hate technology, you hate screens, you miss physical controls, you're going to have a very bad time. But because this is the entry-level Benz, they haven't totally dialed up the technology to nauseam. You still have the giant tablet display that's tilted towards you. It uses the most recent version of MBUX. It's a mixed bag, but it is mostly fast to react, mostly logical, and it does pair to your phone wirelessly pretty well. You have an all-digital gauge cluster. The design language of this interior looks and feels mostly expensive, particularly with this metal weave interior, red leather, and heated seats. The car comes as standard or as base at $43,000 in the rear-wheel drive trim. With all-wheel drive, you're looking at the mid-40s. This is the pinnacle trim, as I mentioned earlier. It starts at nearly $50,000. And when you fully load this thing, it is nearly $60,000 as tested. And that's what you should expect if you're a businessman. Compared to the prior generation vehicle, well, yes, again, the design language is different. I do like how low the dash is. I like the airplane-inspired vents. I do like all the carbon fiber work on the dash or metal work on the dash. But the main thing is if you're going to use this to haul people or your family, the rear seats get slightly more legroom and the trunk is very usable. With that, it's time for us to head into the shop. In the shop with the Mercedes Benz W206 generation C-Class. This is the most controversial C-Class generation ever because every single C-Class, including the AMG 63S, is now powered by a 4-cylinder hybrid drivetrain, which, depending on who you are, means right off the bat this is a dead car to you. But I will say, because this is on the MRA2 platform, it does serve as an excellent luxury car. The MRA2 architecture, or global architecture, is what's shared with the S-Class and E-Class, which means a lot of the refinement to NVH, ride quality, suspension technology, and interior technology have trickled down from those cars and made their way into the C-Class, which is pretty much a good thing. It's a very quiet, refined car. This car gets multi-link front suspension. All the components are aluminum. The rear suspension is a mix of steel and aluminum, while the subframe is all steel. Compared to the car it replaces, this has grown in overall size, as many people are expecting, and body rigidity and all that other fun stuff. It's about 2.5 inches longer, and most of that length finds its way back into the cabin to have more interior volume overall, which is a very good thing. This car also gets optional rear steer, which, as we've talked about a million times at this point, helps decrease the turning radius, but more importantly, it helps increase turn-in and high-speed stability, depending on if you're going slowly or fast. This car does not get optional air ride, but it does get adaptive dampers, and depending on the market you are in, it gets a variety of body styles. You get a wagon, a off-roady wagon, and this sedan. This being a C300 4MATIC, it means it's the base output 4-cylinder with a mild hybrid 48-volt system with a starter generator unit in the gearbox, which removes all of the traditional belt drive components other than the compressor, and is good for a total output of 290 foot-pounds of torque and about 240, 250 horsepower. And again, this is a rear-wheel drive architecture, and it puts its power down through a 9-speed automatic. The one change to the all-wheel drive system versus the prior generation C-Class is apparently this can send more torque to the front. However, they did not specify how much. So again, I'll leave that up to you. This is not the most sporty car in the world, but that's not its mission. It's supposed to be a luxury car. We're about to take this for a quick drive to figure out if it accomplishes that. You don't want an SUV, you don't want an SAV, you don't want a truck, you want a luxury sedan because you're a businessman.
You're poor Patrick Bateman?
I am. Sport Plus.
I've never felt that much luxury before.
This fake engine noise really adds to the luxury experience in my Mercedes C300. I can't wait for the C63 with almost 700 horsepower out of a four-cylinder.
That would be really, really fun. Really fun. Any four-cylinder with a lot of horsepower is the car for me. But let's just kind of get this out of the way, Jack. You know, this isn't a segment that is running between $45,000 and $60,000. We're in the most expensive version. And my overall feeling about this car is, when you look at the expensive Mercedes, like over $100,000, I just, for what you're getting, I just can't stomach it. And then I get in here because this shares a lot of similarities to the more expensive Mercedes.
Same platform, a lot of the same interior design, same interior technology.
Yes. At $50,000, I like it, because I think it blends all the good things Mercedes does, and you can make excuses for the things that don't work, because you're not, you know, going into a mortgage to have a luxury car. The things that this does not do as good as the upper end Mercedes is it's not nearly as quiet. The ride refinement isn't there, and you can feel it on bad pavement. You get more bounciness out of it. And in the back seat, it is definitely far worse. It's definitely a noisier car in the back half of this. So you're losing the refinement of the upper end cars. You're sacrificing that. But everything else, I think they've done a good job blending the sporty part, the luxury part, the style part, and everything that somebody's looking at a car like this wants. But tell me about what the hell's that?
It's my garage door opener, Mark. All right, so let me tell you how it competes against some of the other cars in my approximation.
Okay.
The ES is the biggest boat in this class. It's the only front-wheel drive car. In some ways, it's the cheapest, but it's the worst to drive in any form of sporty fashion, and it always feels like a front-wheel drive car. The A4 is very, very old, in some ways hyper-generic. The 3 Series, particularly at this price point at almost $60,000, you can get a B58. It doesn't sound like a 4-cylinder, makes an assload of power, it gets the same fuel economy as this, but it's not as quiet, it's not as refined, and it doesn't feel as much of a premium luxury car experience in the inside. That feels hyper generic, right? It's typical BMW, typical Clar, and now that they've gone away from all the physical controls, it's probably just as shitty to use as this MBUX, like the iDrive 8.
Don't forget about the TLX, don't forget about the G70.
This class is huge.
I mean, dude, there's so many options. So where does this slot in? Like, why are you choosing this over all of those other ones?
Refinement, I think. None of these cars have air ride, including this, but I think compared to everything other than the ES, it rides probably better. It's definitely one of the quietest cars in its class. Yes, it's not as quiet as an S-Class, but the body structure of this car is very refined. And I think everything on the inside looks nice, feels nice to use, and the aesthetics of this car will age very well. It's sort of almost...
You're talking about the outside.
Yeah, the outside. I think it's like a very generic, but in a good way, business luxury sedan. It's not objectionable like the new BMWs or the Lexus.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it finds some middle ground of being very German while still giving you the technology you want. I don't know. It's really hard with a car like this to say, oh, would I get this over that? So let's just sum it up. If you want the ultimate luxury boat that has great fuel economy, decent drivetrains, but does not drive like fun,
ES300.
The ES is the best car. If you want dynamics, you're going to BMW, and I hate to say this, the G70 is actually really good for what it is because it's a rear-wheel drive architecture. And then this is somewhere in between. I mean...
Yeah, the 4-cylinder is sort of the controversial part because, you know, as we talked about off-camera, 10 years ago, someone would laugh at you if you're like, I'm going to spend $50,000 to $60,000 on a 4-cylinder luxury car. But in the real world, this mild hybrid with the integrated starter generator unit is very smooth. Other than being at an idle, at a light with a window down, you can't really hear the 4-cylinder shittiness or rattliness. Yeah. They mask it better than Lexus and Toyota does. By far, it's a very, very smooth drivetrain. Makes a lot of torque, almost 300 foot-pounds at like 2,500 RPMs, like the peak amount. So it's all down low. So if you're merging, you're on the highway, you're trying to accelerate from a light, it does a good job. It's
for $50,000, I can make an excuse for this 4-cylinder. Once you get up to 60, I'm sorry, I kind of would go towards the TLX Type S, the G70,
or
the BMW for the V6, and even...
Or the inline 6.
The inline 6, sorry. The ES still has a V6 for now, and the hybrid version of it is definitely more refined than this, for sure, in terms of drivetrain, but that's what Toyota does good, is hybrid stuff.
Yeah, and the trans tuning this as well, I know it's not something hyper important to most people, it's fairly responsive, but more importantly, it's not distracting. It never does weird things. It downshifts when you want it to, and then in normal comfort mode, It's really, really smooth, what you want in a luxury sedan. I think this is that, I like to call it the Goldilocks car. If you don't want something as dynamic as a BMW, but you don't want something as boring and as boat-like as the ES, and you still want to have a German car, this is sort of the answer, in my opinion.
I mean, honestly, like, I'm not the person for this, and the more I look at it, the more I'm like, I like it for a Mercedes product because of the price, but I also don't like it. I feel like there's too many options. There's too many options in this class, and if you're somebody that is looking for a car like this is a sad case in point where you have to go and drive these. But the short list, again, ES, BMW, this car,
and the Genesis and the TLX.
Yeah. Which is basically all of them.
There's a lot of cars.
Just drive all of them.
Yeah, have a good time.
They're all great.
So with that, let's head into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Mercedes Benz C300 4MATIC. So what do I think of the baby Benz? Well, I think they found a good balance between the dynamic capability of something like a M340i and the couch-like boatiness of something like a Lexus ES. This car is one of the quietest cars in its class. In fact, it's almost as quiet as some full-blown high-end luxury cars. They've done a very good job in that regards. The interior technology is nowhere as nauseating as some of the higher-end Mercedes-Benz products, which is a good thing. And the interior space doesn't look hyper-generic. It feels expensive and looks expensive. So in some ways, it does a better job in that department than, say, a new 3 Series. Dynamically, it's not the most sporty thing in the world, but it does have good DNA. It has good dynamics. It's nowhere as fun to drive as, again, that M340i, but it's nowhere as boat-like or couch-like as a base A4 or a ES300. And I think that's the perk of this car. It does everything really, really well. The 4-cylinder part of this, though, particularly as tested at $60,000, is a hard pill to swallow, particularly when you are sitting idling in traffic or at a light. It still sounds like a 4-cylinder. It sounds like a diesel, and that does hurt this car. But if you can get past that, what this thing delivers is a essentially seamless luxury car experience. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it returns good fuel economy, everything works well. So with that, thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon.